You know what I think's weird about Project Hail Mary? For a movie that starts with Earth basically staring down extinction, I don't actually think this movie is really about saving Earth. And that's why I walked out of it in such a weird spot. Because I really liked it. I really did. Ryan Gosling is good, it's funny, it looks amazing. And compared to the book, I actually think they handled a lot of the big stuff really well. But I also came out of it feeling like I should have loved it more than I actually did. Not in a this is bad kind of way, not even close to that. It was more of like this really annoying zone where you leave the theater and your review is basically just, yeah, I liked it. Which, if we think about it, I'm making a movie review here. That's the most useless review possible. Like, imagine I ended the video right here. Hey guys, I liked the movie. See you next time, tune back in. That would be brutal. But the weird part is, the more I thought about the movie after, the more I started liking it. Which is either a sign the movie has more going on than it first lets on, or I'm just very easy to manipulate once you put Ryan Gosling in space. Probably both, but once you get past the jokes, the science problem solving, and Ryan Gosling doing his whole confused but still handsome routine, there's actually a lot going on here. This movie is about trust, it's about identity, and what bravery actually means. And it's about a guy who spends his whole movie saying, "I'm just a teacher," only to realize that was never some small thing in the first place. So yeah, I liked Project Hail Mary. I just also think it feels deeper the more you sit with it, while at the same time feeling a little lighter than it maybe should have.
Oh my god.
But I think that's because this movie starts like a Save Earth blockbuster, but that's not really what it ends up being about. And that's what makes this movie in particular kind of tricky to talk about. Because on a basic level, this thing does a lot right. It's entertaining, it moves, it has a great personality. Even when it's throwing some science at you, it never really loses your attention. And that matters because movies like this can get ugly real fast if they start feeling like homework. And this one doesn't. It's easy to watch in the best way. And Ryan Gosling helps a lot with that. Like, he has this specific ability to look like this guy who's deep in over his head and somehow always the perfect person to be there. Like, if Panic had good bone structure. And visually, don't even get me started. It looks insane. The Hail Mary always feels like this tiny little thing in the middle of all that emptiness. And once the movie opens up around Tau Centi and Adrian, it gets even better. The glow around that whole stretch, the scale of it, the way it feels hostile and beautiful at the same time, that stuff blew my mind, and it looked unreal. This is one of those movies where being in the theater actually matters. So while I was watching it, I was into it. I wasn't bored, I wasn't sitting, waiting for it to get going. I wasn't there like, alright man, let's wrap up this astrophage homework, because I was having a good time there. I was learning, I felt like I was there with them. And this is why my reaction felt so weird. Because when a movie is this watchable, this polished, and this easy to go along with, you kind of expect it to fully land. And for me, it almost did. And that's the frustrating part. Because there's a version of this movie that probably becomes one of my favorite theater experiences in a while. And instead, I came out feeling more like, that was really solid, so why am I not more in love with it? And I honestly think part of that reason some people might feel that way is because the movie kind of sells itself like it's one story, then slowly becomes another one. It opens like a classic save the world sci-fi movie. There's the Petrova line, there's astrophage draining stars, there's Earth on a clock, there's Eva Strat forcing together this last-ditch Hail Mary mission and basically throwing Ryland Grace into a crisis he never really chose. So naturally, you go in expecting this big emotional payoff to be, this guy saves Earth. And technically, yeah, that is part of the plot. But emotionally, I don't think that's what this movie is trying to land. And I think if you're waiting for the movie to pay off mainly as a hero saves the planet story, it can feel like something is missing. Because what the movie is actually building toward is a lot more personal than that. It's building towards trust, toward friendship, toward Grace finally making a
Hi,
choice
Grace.
that actually belongs to him. That's a different kind of payoff. And I think once I realized that, a lot of the movie started making a lot more sense to me. And one of the smartest things I found this movie does is the way it keeps cutting between present-day Grace on the Hail Mary and the memories slowly coming back to him. Because those flashbacks are doing way more than just catching us up on the plot. They're not just there to explain astrophage or the mission or how humanity ended up gambling everything on one trip. They're there to explain Grace. And at first it feels like he's remembering the mission, but really he's rebuilding himself. He wakes up not knowing who he is, why he's there, what happened, or even what kind of person he was before all this. And as those memories start filing in, it's not just, oh, okay, now I understand what's going on. It's, oh, okay, now I understand why he doesn't believe in himself. And that's huge, because the movie isn't just revealing information. It's showing us a guy slowly remembering that Earth never ever gave him a choice, and that he never saw himself as the brave one, and that the heroic image people put on him really never matched the way he saw himself. And visually, the movie helps that a lot too. The memory scenes don't just feel like regular flashbacks, they feel like pieces of him physically surfacing. So the flashbacks don't just explain the mission, they're explaining Grace. And to me, that's why I think the "I'm just a teacher" line that he says so much matters so much. Because he says it like it's just an excuse, like it makes him less important, like it makes him the wrong guy for the mission. Like he's saying, listen, I'm not an astronaut, I'm not an action hero guy, I teach science, and somehow I've ended up in interstellar hell. But the more the movie goes on, the more that line starts changing. Because the movie wasn't saying Grace was secretly some fearless legend this whole time. It's saying the thing he thought made him ordinary was actually the thing that made him matter. Patience, curiosity, explaining, connecting to others, and teaching. That's the point. And I really like that. Because the movie never turns him into some big, invincible sci-fi icon. It just slowly brings him back around to who he actually is. Now, let's get to the good stuff. Rocky, the best character in the movie by far. I loved him. And when he shows up, I think that's when the movie really started becoming itself. Because Rocky is not just the fun, alien side character. He's the emotional center of this entire story. He's the proof that this story was never only about Earth. He's an Eridian. He's trying to save Erid. And once Grace realized they're both dealing with the same astrophage crisis, the whole movie stops just being a survival mystery and turns into a first contact friendship story. And thankfully, Rocky works his magic fast. That first contact stuff is great because it has tension, but it also gets funny pretty quickly. It goes from, what is this thing, to, alright, I guess Ryan Gosling has an alien engineer roommate now. And the reason Rocky works is not just because of the writing. It's because he was actually performed on set, not just dropped in later as pure CGI. That practical puppetry in James Ortiz's performance gave Gosling someone physical to play against, and it really shows throughout the movie. Their chemistry actually is basically the whole thing, and that friendship is where the movie stops being save the world and starts becoming choose who matters, and that's why it sticks. Because when you look at it, the contrast between Earth and Rocky is kind of the whole thing. On Earth, Grace is useful, but he's not really trusted with choice. Strat needs him, humanity needs him, but the way they handle him is all pressure, urgency, manipulation, and basically, sorry man, you're up to bat now, you've got to take care of this. Earth treats him like the answer to a problem. Rocky treats him like a person. And that's such a huge difference. Because with Rocky, Grace gets the patience, he gets the respect, and he gets the partnership, and he gets somebody who actually trusts him. And I love the contrast near the end when Rocky basically tells him to take his time with the decision, because Earth never really gave him that. Earth gave him a countdown, and Rocky gave him room. That says so much about what the movie is actually interested in. It's not just asking, can this guy save Earth? It's asking, what happens when the first real trust this guy experiences is not from humanity, but from somebody out there in the dark who has every reason not to trust him either. That's the good stuff. And that's the part of the movie that got better the more I thought about it. And with that all said, I still think the movie held itself back a little. Because when you lay it all out like that, there's actually a lot here that I really like. The ideas are good, the structure throughout was awesome, the relationship with Rocky was heartwarming, and the ending works really well. So why didn't it fully crush me? And I think for me it's basically this. The movie is so good at being watchable, charming, funny, and smooth that every now and then it takes a little bit of the weight out of its bigger moments. Not all the time, not enough to ruin it of course, but enough that I noticed it. Some of the jokes are funny, but every now and then they soften something that maybe should have just sat there and hurt a little more. And that's kind of the trade-off with this adaptation too. A lot of the denser science moments and the inner monologue from the book got streamlined so the movie could move faster and feel more emotional and cinematic. But that also makes it feel a little smoother and a little less lonely in some places, which is good too. So when I say it felt like it was missing something, I don't mean plot. I don't mean ideas or entertainment. I mean the weight. That's the missing part throughout the movie. And that brings me to the part of the movie that I think works best. The bravery stuff. Because Rocky calls Grace brave throughout the movie, and people on Earth basically treat him like brave should already define him. But Grace doesn't really buy that. And honestly, I don't think he should, because remember at the beginning he was forced into the mission. That's not bravery in the clean, heroic way that we usually imagine it. That's pressure, and that's coercion, and that's just him surviving. So when people call him brave early on, it feels a little off because even he knows the truth. But then it switches, and he goes back for Rocky, and that's different. That's the first time in the movie that the bravery he's put onto is fully his own. Nobody forced him to do that. Nobody backed him into a corner. Heck, it wasn't like he was told he had 3 hours to go save Rocky like he did for the fate of humanity even. He chose to do that. And this is the first choice in the whole movie that feels completely and fully his. And that's why I think the title of this video is true. Project Hail Mary was never really about saving Earth. Not emotionally anyway. Maybe it starts there in the beginning, but where the movie actually lands in this is much smaller and a much more personal place. A guy who never thought he was brave finally does one genuine brave thing because of trust, friendship, and choice. And then the movie quietly brings everything full circle. Because Grace, going all throughout, he's like, I'm just a teacher, I can't do this, I'm not strong enough. It makes him seem small, like he's the wrong guy for the job. And then at the end, where does he end up? Teaching again. Only now it's something completely different. Now it's not an excuse, now it's the answer. The thing he thought made him ordinary was actually the thing that made him valuable. And I love that. Because the movie doesn't end with him turning into some larger-than-life action hero. It ends with him becoming more fully himself. So no, I don't think Project Hail Mary is perfect. I think it leaves a little on the table for sure. But by the end, it really isn't about that. Anything in the movie. It's not about the Petrova line, or the astrophage, or even getting back to Earth. It's about a man who was forced into everything, finally making one choice that was completely his. Alright, that's it from me today. Thanks for watching, and let me know what you thought of the movie. And yeah, I'll be having more like this coming soon. I'm in school and stuff, so it takes a little while to make them. But let me know if you want me to do like older movies or keep going with movies that just come out, stuff like that. Make sure you like and subscribe. And yeah, dub. Peace.
What the hell? my God, no way, yeah, yeah.